1960, The Making of the President, chronicles the battle between Richard Nixon and John F. Kennedy, and we're going to review the game for you now here on Legendary Tactics.
Yeah, so we just finished our a game that we hadn't played it in a number of years, but we just sat down and gave our play, and we I don't know what you thought about it, NATO, but I really enjoy it.
Yeah, it's a really fun game, and especially if you're looking to introduce someone to, say, Twilight Struggle or 1989, this is a really good kind of introduction to it. I find it's kind
of like a Twilight Struggle light, eh? Twilight Struggle light.
It feels a little bit lighter. As I said in another video, I don't think it's any less of a game for that, though. I think it's still a great
it is what it is, and it does what it does well.
Yep, and it's funny because it feels lighter, but it plays in about the same amount of time. You're still going to sit down for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to play a game of it.
Yep.
Even though it feels lighter,
Yep.
you know?
And you still, I don't know if you felt it, but I, especially towards the end, the momentum, that intensity that you get in Twilight Struggle was definitely present in this game as well. You feel that, mitigating your opponent's events, and in some way, there is that kind of, I guess, the space track sort of theme that you could use where you bury a card, but it does come back to get you if you bury your opponent's events too much. So I think it's a very smart design. There's some really interesting balancing mechanics, like, for example, the political capital bag, which starts out with 10 cubes each, but can be skewed one way or the other and can potentially affect the election. I was actually going to mention that I love how at the very end, every single thing that you've done basically translates into political capital that go into that bag at the end.
Yes, and it can
no piece is wasted, right? So every single thing you've done basically is measured up.
Yes, and I have found that for the most part, it's a very tense battle right down to the end, and in many cases, it's too close to call. The game that we just played was 289 to 248.
Yeah,
and which
it came down to the last draws.
States.
It came down to the last draws on our the final states that we put in. So
yep, it was literally one or two states decided it. It was that close, and I find that the game generally plays that way. I have played a few games where, for whatever reason, the game just really skews one way or the other. But for the most part, the balancing kind of mechanics I find are really good to kind of keep everything in check.
Now, do you think that might be a drawback to the game, though, where you play this whole game out, and then at the very end it comes down to, like, you put in New York and Pennsylvania. Like, basically I dominated the entire game, and then because of a few lucky cube draws, you would flip the game. Like, do you feel that's a negative?
It is a bit of a negative. I mean, from a gaming standpoint, I think that it's fine for most people playing this game. They're gonna enjoy the excitement. But on the other hand, sometimes it can feel like it really came down to, like, oh, you got that event in the last turn and that really won it for you.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways in that game we just played, I did block you out of the south for the last turn, which and quite early, so you were stuck,
which cost me the election. You know?
In some ways, it did, right?
Yeah, and that's what I would say is that there's a lot of events that, if you get them early on, they're kind of inconsequential, but you get them, in the last turn. Like, imagine a card like Whistle Stop, where you can, walk through seven states in a turn. Things like that. If you get a great hand in the last turn, and especially if you draw the initiative and you go last you choose to go second in the last turn, you save up an event like that, and you can can decide the game. And that's, if it's kind of a good thing in a way, because you have that excitement, but it can feel a bit cheap if you pull off
a little anticlimactic,
victory.
Right? Oh, geez, after all that hard work. And then,
and it can feel very kind of swingy like that, where but maybe you get to a certain point.
That could also be a reflection of elections too, which are swingy in general too.
Yeah, and I mean, historically, it was a very close election. So it's totally fair.
That might be one area where Twilight Struggle kind of shines, because Twilight Struggle actually breaks it into the 3 different stages of war.
Yes.
So you can't draw certain cards, or it's less likely to draw certain cards at the end game.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
yeah. I mean, Twilight Struggle has that issue as well. If you are the U.S. player and you draw a handful of the European events, the late war European events, you can flip Eastern Europe over to
That's true.
Gain control of Europe, or
yeah.
Really hurt the Soviet position there. But this one I find is I like the open sandbox feel of it.
That's very neat.
It's you can battle back and forth in regions and so forth. But yeah, it's an interesting mix, and there's some absolute brilliance to it, and there's also parts where, as I said, you can pull off a victory on the last card, and it can feel a bit cheap.
Yeah,
it can feel almost anticlimactic.
It does have a lot of neat little sort of game mechanic where, for example, you have the media presence.
Yes.
You have the endorsements. I like the things that they've added in there to make it
yes.
feel more election-y, and give that kind of feel to it as well. Nice flavor.
Yeah, and I think the endorsements and the media have about the right amount of strength, in terms of their effect. It's not a waste of campaign points to spend, to try and get some advertising cubes going. It doesn't feel like a waste. That said, you're probably not going to spend a ton of them throughout the game. You're going to, spend a few here, spend a few there, but the effect that they have is actually pretty reasonable.
So there's the issues track as well. There's economics, there's military, and civil action,
civil rights.
With those 3, what imports do you kind of put on those 3?
Well, they're fine as a mechanic. I think they're they cover probably the 3 biggest issues of that
election cycle, right? Yeah.
I mean, and they tie into the cards as well. The cards that you get if you're the leader in defense, then you get a certain bonus. So a card can be great or it can be deadly for you because depending on who's leading in that issue, and you may want to work around that.
I just love how there's so many different avenues that you can play. I mean, you can play the card for the ops, you can play the card for the event. You can also play, into all those different, the issues. You can play into media. So there's a lot of different avenues where you can actually spend your points.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's kind of neat.
But it's a really interesting game. The other thing I don't know if it's a disappointment exactly, but the debate turn.
It seems a little underwhelming to me.
Yeah, I mean, considering how important it was to the actual election, this was the first televised debate, and there's a lot of really interesting, things you can look up online about why Nixon lost that debate, and a lot of it came down to body language and stuff like that. It was
the
really
lazy shave.
The lazy shave, all that stuff. Yeah, exactly. So there's some, overall, like if I had to sum up this game, I would say it's a very good game. It has some absolutely brilliant bits to it, and some other things where I feel it's just a little bit kind of underwhelming. So it's never going to be a top 10 game of all time for me. But if you say, hey, let's fire it up, I'm in. Like it's that much fun.
The real elegance with this game is that you can pull this game out with an intermediate or even moderate gamer. They don't have to be in the vein of the Twilight Struggles or or the heavier the Coin series, for example. You can sit down with any kind of intermediate to moderate gamer and fire this up, no problem.
Yes. And I think part of it is because people understand elections, if they've voted before and they have an idea of how elections work. So there's already a base understanding as far as, how elections work. Maybe they don't know the details of this particular campaign, but they know that there's always a bizarre series of events that occurs right before.
That's right. Yes.
right during a campaign and before a debate and so forth. So
one other mechanic I absolutely love in this game that I did want to bring up was how you can trigger your opponent's events when they play a card. I think that mechanic is just really sharp and well done in this game.
Yes, and it makes it
with the momentum markers. Yeah,
yep.
so good.
Yep. You have another currency to worry about. You're trying to, do you hang on to your momentum marker? Like, do you play the momentum marker to trigger this event, or is your opponent holding back an event they're hoping to bait you with? And
that happened to us in our
earlier
our
event.
Yes.
Where you're trying to get away with playing an event that would otherwise be unplayable. And so yes, there's a nice give and take there. What are your thoughts overall?
I really like this game. Yeah, I really like this game. I feel like just because of it's a little more its playability factor with a little more of a broader audience. Don't get me wrong. I think Twilight Struggle is in my top 5. So I mean, it's just sheer brilliance. But this is it would be in my top 20 probably.
Yeah. Now, where would you rank 1989 Dawn of Freedom? Which is
another similar kind of vein.
Similar
as well.
one.
Yeah. Probably a bit higher than this. I would personally, just because it's got more of it has its own dynamics, but it's got a Twilight Struggle, a little more Twilight Struggle feel to it.
Yeah.
Closer to Twilight
feels
Struggle.
weightier. It feels weightier.
Big time. Yeah. So I appreciate the light fare that this brings, and that it still gives you kind of that intensity, that anxiety that you get with Twilight Struggle as well. So it's great.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And so this is a game that I have on my shelf and will stay on my shelf. It's a great one to pull out, especially if you're looking for something that's if it's getting a little bit late but you still have a bit of energy for an hour and a half. This is a great option. So.
Indeed. Now there may just full disclaimer, there may be some brain burn with this game, so don't.
Yes.
There is a little bit of that. You're gonna need a little in the gas tank.
Yes. Yeah. For sure. Oh. So these are our thoughts on the game 1960, The Making of the President. We hope you got some value out of this, and maybe it can guide your decision. If we had to, tell you to buy or not to buy. I would recommend.
I would give it the thumbs up for sure. Yeah,
this is good for any type of game, or even the lighter ones.
And if you're interested, we are going to be posting a card by card playthrough of the 1960 as well as a full game playthrough that we've just we'll be putting up very soon. So look for those as well if you would like more content.
Yeah. So thanks again for watching. And please like and subscribe, and let us know what you think of this game and maybe any other games that you would like us to cover.
I'm Cax.
And I'm NATO.
And this is
Legendary Tactics.